Here's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast. We've got Major League Baseball free agency, NFL quarterback changes, lots of things going on in the NFL this news cycle. Our pick sixes for the week, and Coach Prime making some news this week too. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove Podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up with me?
Welcome into an all-new edition of the Sports Stove Podcast, presented by True Classic Tees. Tell you more about them in just a moment. I'm your host, Vince Stover, and I'm joined by my dad, Dale Stover, tonight. Dad, how you doing?
Doing good. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here, as always. It's been a pretty crazy day, pretty crazy week here in the sports world. We've got interesting stuff going on in pretty much every sport, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening this week.
Yep. Yeah, there is. The busy time of the year.
Yes, it is. I want to start today with the baseball news as free agency has kicked off and a lot of things happening. Of course, the big news came with Aaron Judge signing his 9-year deal. Very expensive contract there for the Yankees. Let's start with that one, Dad. Aaron Judge, are you surprised he stayed in New York? Let's start, I guess, with that. And then after that, 9 years for a 31-year-old's an interesting offer.
Yes, not surprised he stayed with the Yankees because, again, that's an organization where I can see, you'd like to spend your career there. That was an awful long contract for a guy that age. That was a little surprising on that end. But there's been so much movement in baseball, hard for me to kind of keep up with all of it. But I was hoping Judge would come to the Giants maybe, but not surprising he stayed with the Yankees.
Yeah, it sounds like he wanted to be there, which is, I guess, kind of the most important thing, right? Where do you want to play? He was going to be rich wherever he played. Didn't really matter that much. They talked about that. It sounds like he's going to be the captain. That was part of his deal. Is that how it's supposed to work? Naming the captain for your team by saying, hey, if you sign with us, we'll let you be the captain.
Well, you wouldn't think so, but I heard some talk today, that the whole idea of being a captain is probably a lot different in all the different professional sports. Means different things, has different roles and stuff like that. So, really free agency in a lot of sports, but especially baseball, you can ask for crazy things, and so you never know.
Yeah, it sounds like his teammates like him. I never really could get a whole lot. I'm not a Yankee fan. Don't pay a whole lot of attention to the Yankees outside of fantasy baseball and stuff like that. So that sounds, though, like he's well-liked in the organization. So being a captain, I don't think that's going to draw anybody's ire away from liking him or anything like that. But that was a big deal. And, again, it takes him one website says that he's 30. I thought he was 31. Either way, he should finish his career in New York. How many great years does Aaron Judge have left in him?
Well, that's the question because he had such a great year last year, but he's always been good. I would think he should have another, 3 or 4 pretty good years. Depending, on the talent they have around him and everything, that obviously will help. But and they have that and usually do. So I would think, should be still strong for 3 or 4 more years. Will they have a year like last year? Probably not again, but we'll see.
Yeah, it'd be pretty crazy if he did. I don't think that's expected for most people, at least. Being able to DH and stuff like that. I think 5, maybe even 6 years of elite talent. And by elite talent, I'm saying 40-plus home runs. And with that comes the RBIs. I think you get that into 36 years old, somewhere in that range. And then you'll start to see more of the tapering off and everything from there as well. And again, that's saying that he stays clean in those 6 years as well. Other signings, Trey Turner was a big one. Shortstop, 29 years old. He signs an 11-year deal with the Phillies, an expensive deal as well. I don't like these long contracts like this in baseball. I like Tatis's because he's really young, but Turner, 11 years puts him at 40 years old. Judge, 9 years puts him at 39 years old. I'm not a big fan of these, but Trey Turner is one of the best players in baseball. And so I think for Philadelphia to go out and get him was a pretty big deal for them and really bolsters their lineup coming into next year. What were you? Have you talked to your Philly source at all? And what are your thoughts on the Trey Turner signing?
Yeah, I was going to reach out to my Philly source today, but I didn't, and or didn't get a hold of him. And so the Phillies have made a lot of moves, and of course, I think they were going to look pretty strong this year anyhow. But they've been big, with the pitching staff, and of course, we're getting Trey there. So I think. A lot of teams have made a lot of moves, and I'm sure they're not done yet. It'll be real interesting when the smoke clears just to see who's on what team or whatever. And, of course, when you think about fantasy baseball, do you look at somebody, boy, they've been a good player, or does it matter, that they've switched teams? Because it looks like a lot of guys will have switched teams.
Well, tune into the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball show in February. I'll give you an answer to that question. But it is. You talk about fantasy baseball, switching teams, ballparks, home ballpark is important. The lineup's important. All those kinds of things are important. So, yeah, that'll play into it. Pitching-wise, Jacob deGrom signs a 5-year deal with the Rangers, and the Mets fill his spot with Justin Verlander. I actually like Verlander, 5 years older. I like him better than deGrom just because Verlander's probably going to pitch more than deGrom does. deGrom has been going, a third of the games in the season, maybe half the games in a season, and he's only been pitching about 5 to maybe 6 innings when he is pitching, whereas Verlander is going to give you more, I think. Plus, the Mets save money. They signed a 2-year deal to Verlander, not as expensive as the deal to deGrom and the Rangers. But if you're the Rangers, I can't blame you for going out and getting him. Last year, they tried to take care of the bats. Looks like this year they're going to try to take care of the pitching. DeGrom and Verlander, two, long, been in the Major League Baseball for a long time, been aces for a long time. How do you like those two signings?
Yes, I mean they're both players that you want to get. DeGrom, boy, if he snaps back and all of a sudden, stays healthy, he can probably make a real difference on a team real quick. And Verlander's proved, his worth. So that's an interesting, should be a good pickup for the Mets.
Yeah, other signings of somewhat note. Zach Eflin goes to the Rays. Let's see here. Kenley Jansen signs with the Red Sox. Interesting signing. Jose Abreu goes to Houston. And Wilson Contreras, the catcher, goes from the Cubs to the Cardinals. That's a really good signing for the Cardinals. Really going to bolster them, I think, as well. We'll stay on top of these Major League Baseball signings. Carlos Correa and Xander Bogaerts, the two top guys on the board right now. Correa, there's a lot of talk about San Francisco and also Minnesota, staying in Minnesota. Xander Bogaerts, everything that I've read, Boston is where he will stay, working on contracts there as well. So we'll see how it all shakes out in the long term. And like I said, we'll talk about Major League Baseball as we have the opportunities to do so and as things continue to come up. Let's see here. Next up, let's move to the NFL, Dad. Lots of news in the NFL. Let's start with last week. Deshaun Watson gets his first game back. The defense scores 3 touchdowns. Well, the special team scores 1. Defense scores 2. Watson didn't look great. They still get the win. How long will it take to even look good for Deshaun Watson?
I think it'll take most of the rest of the season. Then I think, you have an off-season program and training camp and everything, and then he may be right back to his form next year. I think it'll take, definitely a few games and probably to the end of the year. Maybe he'll gel by then and things will really pick up. But like I said, he's got talent around him, and that should be an advantage for him.
Yeah, but I mean, he was playing the worst team in the league. He went 12 for 22, 131 yards, and interception. I expected more from him in this game. I didn't expect him to be great, but at least throw a touchdown. Be better than 50% completion against the team. Well, he was a little better than 50%, but against the team in Houston, who's only won one game this year, he averaged 6 yards per pass. I mean, you got Amari Cooper. That you should get some help on those things. I was surprised. I thought he would look better than he did. Luckily for Cleveland, the defense played phenomenal football and did their job. I expect within the next week or two to start seeing a better looking Deshaun Watson. Not great, not back to form, but he should be throwing touchdowns here pretty soon, or else they could be in some serious trouble. Speaking of quarterbacks, let's talk about the situation in San Francisco. Brock Purdy, the Mr. Irrelevant, comes in, third string quarterback coming into the season in San Francisco. Comes in and looks really, really good for the 49ers. Everybody now is saying, San Francisco's going to go to the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. I think you need to hold your horses on that one a little bit, but he did look good. Give the defenses some time to scout him, and I think you're going to see some major weaknesses open up here over the next couple weeks. But he threw the ball 37 times, 25 completions, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception on the day. There's nobody available. He's your quarterback at San Francisco. There's nobody else out there to go get. What do you think? San Francisco's got a great defense. How can they succeed with Brock Purdy at quarterback?
I don't think they'll be able to. They do have a great defense, no doubt about that. But we'll see what their schedule here down the line. I don't know if San Francisco is a lock to win the division. Now, again, I've heard some people. I heard a national guy today. Their defense is so good. Just a little bit of help on offense, and they're in the Super Bowl. I haven't seen that at all. I don't think they're, even though the NFC is not as strong, we'll see. And again, like you said, as teams get a chance to scout him, and we'll just see over the rest of the season. I wouldn't think maybe, like I said, I would think he would have to struggle a little bit being a third string quarterback.
Yeah, I also understand the idea that the defense is good enough for them to make a run. I don't think Super Bowl, but to make a run in the playoffs, win a game, still win the division, I think is within range. I think back to Baltimore, right, when they won with Trent Dilfer back in the day, Ray Lewis and all those kinds, or actually with Flacco, when they won with Flacco. I mean, Flacco, he wasn't great. The defense was phenomenal. I think that Purdy's going to hit a rough stretch just because they're going to be able to scout him and see him more. But the defense has been phenomenal. They held the Dolphins to 17 points. The Dolphins have a really good offense. They shut out the Saints. They held the Cardinals to 10 points. They held the Chargers to 16 points. Held the Rams to 14 points. The Chiefs put up 44 on them, but that was before they went on this little win streak. So they got Tampa Bay this week, Seattle, Washington, Vegas, and Arizona to close out the season. That's not a horribly rough stretch. And so, we'll see how it shakes out. This week will be an interesting challenge against Tampa. An okay defense, a team that's really been struggling, but San Francisco's the favorite in this game this weekend too. So it'll be interesting to see how Brock Purdy holds up. One of the quarterbacks that was mentioned for San Francisco this week was Baker Mayfield. Gets cut by Carolina. The Rams end up claiming him. The Rams have all kinds of quarterback issues with injuries. Stafford's out for the year. Wolford's injured as well. So you're sitting there with the old Virginia quarterback and Perkins. Baker comes in, I think, to the perfect situation, Dad. Now, granted, Cooper Kupp's out. That's not great for him. But this system is what Baker knows. Stefanski ran the system in Cleveland. It's the old San Francisco McVay, Shanahan, Kubiak offense, and it fits what Baker does. If Sean McVay is the genius that everybody thinks he is, I think Baker Mayfield has an opportunity to at least not look as miserable as he's looked the last 2 years. So can he come in and do anything good? I mean, the Rams aren't going to make the playoffs. They're not going to challenge for the division, any of those things. But I think Baker fell into a good situation. I don't know if he'll start this week, but I think by next week he will be starting. And, maybe he gets the chance to build a little bit of value behind his name as well going into free agency next year. And the Rams could get a compensatory pick by signing him if he gets signed somewhere else next year. And we know the Rams don't have very many picks. So this was actually a good move for the Rams overall. Any thoughts on Baker Mayfield and the Rams situation?
Well, I think it is a good move for the Rams, and I do think I agree with you. It's a good place for Baker Mayfield. I don't know that he's going to have a great time the rest of the year because the Rams are in trouble. I think the Rams are out of it at this stage. And like I said, he does not have some of the weapons that they've had, in the past. But I think as far as having, a coach that'll work with him and being in a system, it might help his value. It'd be interesting to see if he looks good enough that they think he's going to be their quarterback going forward. That would be real interesting. But we'll see how it plays out. I think it was a good spot for him.
Yeah, I agree. Year after year, the pundits say Green Bay needs to draft a receiver in round number 1. And year after year, I say on this podcast, we have talked about it. Other Packer fans say, hold up, none of our great wide receivers of recent years have been a first-round draft pick. The Packers do a great job at drafting in other rounds and developing guys up, guys like Devontae Adams, Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb. And Christian Watson seems to be the next in line. He has got on the field finally, and he has been phenomenal into the Rookie of the Year race at this point. I mean, the issue with the Packers, it may be depth. Wide receiver depth still may be an issue. But when Romeo Doubs is healthy, he looked good before he got injured. Now Christian Watson looks great. I mean, do the Packers need to go out and get a true number 1 receiver in the offseason, or can they build the way that they've been building?
I think with Watson looking like he has, I think they may be in pretty good shape. They may get a free agent. I don't know if they'll keep Sammy Watkins or not, or get somebody different there. But I think with Lazard and with Watson and with Romeo Doubs, Romeo Doubs was quite the wide receiver. And I think when you get him and Watson both on the team, then all of a sudden you've got weapons. And of course, Lazard is a guy that you can always depend on. So I think they're in. Of course, you got Randall Cobb right now. How long he will be on the team, I don't know, and he'll be an important person to replace. They thought they had that with Amari Rodgers, and they did not. So we will see where that goes. But I think especially the last few games here, I think they'll have Doubs and Watson both on the field, and if they can stay healthy, I think you'll see. You'll give Rodgers a lot more weapons, a lot different kind of weapons than what they've had, because again, their running game is so strong also.
Yeah, hopefully, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're banking on. So we'll see. I've always been okay with them, even this year, not taking a receiver in the first round, although I think they could have and landed. I think that back when they drafted Jordan Love, they should have taken T. Higgins, and I'll hold true to that for the rest of my life. But that being said, I'm okay with them not taking a receiver in the first round. It's a matter of just finding the right fit for your team, filling the needs that you have for your team. And I think they've been able to do that in what they've done. And Christian Watson has been phenomenal for sure this year. And it was just a matter of him getting time, right? That's what you got to do with young receivers. They got to have time. And with time, he's turned into quite the show. He's a must start in fantasy football when he's not on bye. And everything's going well for him right now. So all that is good. Not everything's going well in Tennessee, though, Dad. Titans fire the GM who they just extended. Well, he's gone just like that. Here's my thoughts on it. I have no source, obviously. I know nothing about the situation. I'm guessing there was a disagreement somewhere between, I was going to say Schneider, but that's not his name. The Titans GM. What's the? Oh no,
John Robinson.
John Robinson. Thank you, Robinson and Vrabel. my guess is there was a situation on the roster where there was a disagreement, and at the end of the day, Vrabel won out, and so they got rid of Robinson. That's purely opinion, but that's my take on it. I don't think you just drop a guy in the middle of the season or towards the end of the season, but in season, a general manager who has built a team that has made the playoffs every year or close to every year since he's been there. He's had some draft misses, but what GM hasn't? He's had some draft hits. I've heard people talk about, well, he traded A.J. Brown, and A.J. Brown went off on him this week. I just can't believe that's it, because Treylon Burks has looked fine. Maybe they hate Malik Willis, but you don't know until you see him, right? So I think there's a disagreement in personnel somewhere, and at the end of the day, Vrabel is higher on the food chain than Robinson was in Tennessee right now, and Vrabel won out. That's my thoughts on it. Any opinions on what happened in Tennessee, why Robinson's out, and what's next?
Well, I was surprised that they got rid of him when they did. Again, I've been gone from Tennessee now for, a few years, but when I was there, I always thought he would be gone at some point. I did not think he was a great GM from there. And of course, like I said, every GM makes some good moves and every GM makes some mistakes. But I would guess there was a disagreement here around the trade deadline and free agency, and there was somebody that Vrabel wanted, and they didn't get him, or they just needed more people at a certain position. From there, I don't think the fact that they just played Philadelphia and the A.J. Brown thing kind of, looked worse. I wouldn't think that's why you would fire a guy the next week. But there was something there. I'm just real surprised about the timing at this point, unless, again, you would think they'll get somebody in place because scouting and everything, gets to be a big thing here pretty quick. And so maybe, doing it before the end of the year makes some sense with that, because otherwise you wait till the end of the year and the personnel department's all, going in a certain direction. Now they can change that. I wouldn't think Vrabel, would be the GM also. I would think I would think it's just a disagreement somewhere down the line. It was interesting. The statement was made by the owner, the acting owner, Amy Adams Strunk. And, she just said that, they've been improving, but felt like this, they needed to make some others, and this was it. But like I said, I don't think it was her decision as far as her evaluating the team, saying, here we need to go. And so it would make sense that, the head coach is where it came. And he does have a lot of clout. He's done well there. And, again, I think you and I both think at any point it could fall off for a couple of years, and that would be different. But he's done well there. And I was really surprised about the timing of it. I thought, even this week, if it would have been 2 games for the end of the year, but then you get to the playoffs, and then that's real awkward if you're in the playoffs. So apparently it's a change they decided they were going to make. And maybe now's a good time.
Yeah. I think that Vrabel is going to be, if he's not going to be given the title general manager, I think he's going to be given the authority of it. They might bring in a guy that carries the title, kind of like Mayock did in Vegas with John Gruden, where Vrabel's going to run the show, but they're going to have somebody else there to do some of the other things and everything like that. But you remember Vrabel, he played under Bill Belichick. He kind of holds that Belichickian style of things, and Belichick runs the Patriots. And so my guess is, especially if it was a disagreement with Vrabel and Robinson and Vrabel won out, I think Vrabel ends up running the show in Tennessee. How will that work? It'll only be yet to see. And if that's even the way that it goes, we'll have to wait and see on that one as well. But very surprising move. Tennessee is an interesting program, interesting setup, all that kind of stuff, have been for a long time. They got a new stadium that's going to be built. It's past the next level of okays from the city or whatever. So they're getting close to getting that finalized. Anytime you're going to put that much money into a stadium, you're going to want a team that can fill the stadium. And I think that the thought process is there still needs to be more steps forward on it. If Willis is the quarterback, first of all, that's for unless Robinson didn't make that call, that's credit to Robinson. If Willis is the quarterback, then everything will work out just fine. If Willis is not the quarterback, then it will fall off because Tannehill's not it. And if Willis is not it, where are you going to get another quarterback? So we'll see how that one shakes out. Before we get into our picks, Dad, I do want to take a quick look at the standings and kind of look it through. Me and you were talking about this on the phone the other day. Legit contenders in the NFL. There's just not that many. The playoffs are going to be interesting. Let's start in the NFC because, you got Philadelphia as the 1 seed. Minnesota is the 2 seed. Let's see here. At the moment, San Francisco would be the 3, Tampa the 4, and then Dallas the 5. Dallas has a better record than two of those teams that are ahead of them, but division winners and all those kinds of things. Who's contenders in the NFC East? I see 3 at the moment. How many contenders do you see in the NFC?
Well, I think, as far as in the East, like you said, you get the Giants and Washington. Since I knew we were going to talk about this tonight, I looked at it a little bit. And when you look at their end of their schedule, they both have fairly tough schedules and they play each other. I think the Giants play Philadelphia twice yet here during the end of the year.
But neither of those teams are Super Bowl contenders.
No. As far as contenders, I think honestly, I think Philadelphia, I think they're the best team. I think they're, could somebody else, beat them in the playoffs or whatever? Maybe so, but I think Philadelphia so far, barring major injury, head and shoulders above everybody else in the NFC.
I agree that Philadelphia is the best team. I think, and I know you will melt, but I think Minnesota and Dallas are both contenders in the NFC. Would they be contenders in the AFC? No, but I think they are contenders in the NFC. And I never like saying that one team is the only team, right? That's just not, statistics don't go in your favor with that. But San Francisco, they've got the defense and, get the right matchup. Maybe they're able to pull it off. Or maybe Brock Purdy's the guy and he ends up being it, But the way I look at it, I think Philadelphia is by far the favorite. But I think that Minnesota and Dallas are threats as well in the NFC. On the AFC side, a little bit of a different story, but not drastically different, right? I see maybe 3, I'll say 4 Super Bowl contenders in the AFC. How about you?
Yes, I'd agree with that.
All right, who are your 4?
I think it'd be Miami, Buffalo, Kansas City, and Cincinnati.
100% agree with you. I think Cincinnati might be the favorite. No, they're not statistically the favorite. They might be my favorite though in the AFC. They have defense, they have offense, they've got playmakers at every level on offense. Even if Joe Mixon is injured, P. Ryan has been really, really good, and I think a lot of that plays on the offensive line as well. Joe Burrow is phenomenal. I like Joe Burrow better than Josh Allen. Allen gives you more on the ground and he can run more effectively. And he's going to stay healthier probably. But when you come to the moxie, you come to the throwing ability. I just like Joe Burrow better than Josh Allen. I do like Patrick Mahomes better than Joe Burrow. But that being said, I like the Cincinnati team. They were there last year. The guys that they added in free agency this year should only build and get better. And Miami, they're dangerous, so I'm going to put them in there. I don't trust Miami yet because of the quarterback. But for me, I go Cincinnati, Kansas City 2, Buffalo 3, Miami 4 is how I rank them in the AFC. How do you rank those 4 teams?
Yes, I would agree. Right now, I think Cincinnati may be the front runner in some way just because they seem to have Kansas City's number. Now, whether that would hold up in the playoffs, I don't know. But yeah, then I would think Kansas City, Buffalo. Now, Buffalo, a little bit of a blow with the injuries, injury this week, with the linebacker there, Von Miller. But, Buffalo, you just don't know. I mean, some weeks they're head and shoulders above everybody. And then, so what's going to happen in the playoffs? Are they going to get hot? And, Miami, I don't think you can count them out, but, I would put them fourth. Yes.
Yeah. Right now, I would say Cincinnati and Philly are the two teams that I'm looking at for the Super Bowl. But again, I think Kansas City and Buffalo, especially, are great contenders. And I just think Dallas and Minnesota are just too dangerous to overlook in a one-game situation. You never know what's going to happen with all that. I was going to go back, and I didn't have time to do it, and pull my comments about Jalen Hurts from the draft preview I did on his draft year. I was very bold on my Jalen Hurts take. So I believe I had him ranked third in that class. But I got to go back and find it, and maybe next week we'll pull that up, or maybe we'll wait till he goes to the Super Bowl or something like that. But I was all in on Jalen Hurts. I thought like he had the potential to be really, really good in the NFL, and I just, the way I saw it was he was a winner. And I have questioned, even after saying that, I've questioned what can he do in the NFL. Well, he's showing us this year he can do it, and the coaching staff's done a great job as well, and the GM did a great job putting guys around him that will only help him out, like A.J. Brown here this year as well. All right, let's get into our pick six, Dad. Each week we pick 6 games. We pick primetime games. We pick Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night, and then 3 games of our own. Before we do that, though, I do need, let's see here, if I can find it. I had it pulled up a minute ago. Tell you a little bit about True Classic Tees. We are excited about what's ahead in the new year. I'll be hosting the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show presented by Belly Up Fantasy. And associated with Belly Up Fantasy, or partnering with Belly Up Fantasy, is True Classic Tees. And today's episode is being sponsored by True Classic Tees, a brand that makes T-shirts that actually fit, not to mention super soft. When you're, got a little bit of a belly like myself, finding the right T-shirt can be incredibly frustrating. So most T-shirts are too tight in all the wrong places, or way too big and boxy, but not True Classic. True Classic has already helped over 2 million men get their fit on at an affordable price. The Sports Stove listeners get access to the absolute best deal they offer for a limited time only, 25% off. Use that code BELLYUPFANTASY, who we're partnering with for the Fantasy Baseball Show in the new year. And go to trueclassic.com. Use the promo code BELLYUPFANTASY. 25% off, Dad, is an incredible, incredible deal. So thank you to True Classic and to Belly Up Fantasy for their participation and help and support of this program. All right, Dad, let's get into it. Pick sixes. We'll start with the Thursday night game. The Las Vegas Raiders are on the road against the beat-up Los Angeles Rams. Vegas, 5.5-point favorites. Which way did you go with this one?
This was a tough one. Like I said, I wouldn't have picked this if it hadn't been the game we needed to. But I'm going to go with the home team. I don't know that they'll win, but with 5.5 points, I'll take the Rams.
That surprises me, Dad. The Rams are bad. Vegas has not played well, but the Rams are bad. And we don't know who their quarterback's going to be. Is it Perkins? Is it Baker Mayfield? That one really shocks me, Dad. I'm going to go Vegas in this one, 5.5. Would I like it better if it was 3.5? Sure. But Vegas should be able to win this game easily. So I'm going to go Vegas 5.5. You go the Rams. Let's see here. Sunday night game is a really interesting one. The Chargers are hosting. They are 3.5 underdogs, 3.5-point underdogs to the Miami Dolphins. Dolphins coming off a tough loss last week to the San Francisco 49ers. So Miami 3.5-point favorites on the road. Which way did you go on this one?
I'll go with Miami, the cover of 3.5. Again, I've always liked the Chargers, but I think Miami is doing well. And, even though it's on the road, I think they'll rebound. So I'll go with Miami.
Yeah, I told you several weeks ago, I'm not picking the Chargers ever again. They just continue to disappoint me. So I'm going Dolphins as well. 3.5-point favorites. They should win that game. Although the Chargers have everything they need, except for maybe a coach. We've talked about that before, and possibly Sean Payton coming in next year. But he's not there yet, so I'll go the Dolphins as well. Monday night is another road favorite. New England, 1.5-point favorites against Arizona. All three of these primetime games, the road team is the favorite. Which way did you go? Did you go with the road favorites or the home dog?
I went with the home dog on this one. I'm not really convinced a lot about the Patriots. Of course, Arizona, you never know who's going to show up, but being it's Monday night and it's at home, I'll take Arizona and the points.
I'll say you don't know about New England. I don't know about Arizona. I'm going to go 1.5 points. I think New England can win this game. So I'm going to take the favorite in this one as well. The New England Patriots, I'll take at 1.5-point favorites over Arizona. I think Arizona is a dumpster fire. There's just nothing good coming out of Arizona these days. So I'm going to stay away from them as well. All right, we got 3 other games to pick. Who's your 4th game of the week?
I'm going to take Seattle over Carolina by 3.5. Again, I'm not a big Seattle fan, but they've played better. There's been no doubt about it. And they're at home, and so they should be able to beat. I think they can cover that at Carolina.
Yeah, I don't know about Seattle. I know they've won games this year, and they've been a lot better than we thought they would be. They just scare me too much. Carolina, that should be an easy win for them, especially being at home. But there's a reason why that line is closer than it should be. So I stayed away from that game, but I did consider it as well. My 4th game, the only underdog I took this week, Dad, and I was shocked to see they were underdogs. It's the Minnesota Vikings. They're 2.5-point underdogs to the Lions. The Lions have played well, but Minnesota's 10-2. I mean, I was shocked to see them as an underdog, and so I jumped on that one immediately. I go Vikings plus 2.5 this week on the road at Detroit. Who's your 5th game this week?
I will take a revenge game here, and Cincinnati will get revenge on Cleveland, 5.5, and it's at Cincinnati. So I think the Bengals are hot right now, and I'll go with the Bengals on that one.
I would have liked that number to be a little lower, so I stayed away from that one too, because at some point, Deshaun Watson will show up. Will it be this week? I have no idea, so I stayed away from it. I went with a large spread, but I told you I'm going against Houston as often as possible. Dallas is 16.5-point favorites against Houston. It's at Dallas. Dallas should have no problem putting up points against Houston. So I'm comfortable with that over 2 touchdown spread. So I'll go Dallas minus 16.5. Game number 6 for you this week. Who do you got?
Well, let me just back up on Dallas because last week they did come through for me, but I'm not going to go that route again, at least not this week. So this one I'll go with Philadelphia. Again, they're a road team, but they're favored by 6.5 over the Giants. I think Philadelphia is the real deal. It's it's a lot of points, but I'll go with Philadelphia.
Yeah, Philly. I don't know. There's something about this game that scares me. They're the better team. They should win, and they should win by at least a touchdown. But I don't know. There's just something that's thrown me off this week on this game, so I stayed away from that one as well. I ended up going with another kind of big spread. Kansas City, 8.5-point favorites over Denver. Denver's defense has been good. Their offense has been atrocious. Patrick Mahomes is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, if not the best. He's going to beat Denver by more than 8.5 points. So I'm going to go Kansas City as my last game this week, and I just feel like it's the right thing to do in this situation. So I went with that one. Who I forgot to write down. I apologize. You said Cincinnati. Okay, never mind. I remember now. Let's talk about the games that we did not pick this week that we both stayed away from. Let's start. Let's see here. Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Baltimore start Tyler Huntley at quarterback. Pittsburgh being at home seems like they'd have a chance to win this game. Baltimore have been weird, but Huntley's one of those guys that if he only has to play for 2 or 3 weeks, he can get you some wins in Baltimore. So which way did you go here? Pittsburgh at home or Baltimore on the road?
I think Pittsburgh is surprised. So, again, it's a division game. I wouldn't be shocked if Pittsburgh wins this one at home. So, I'd go with Pittsburgh.
Okay. And I probably lean that way too, but I would not be shocked at all if Baltimore wins that game.
Right.
Tennessee, we talked about the turmoil there this week with firing the general manager. The 3.5-point favorites at home against the Jaguars. Jaguars, one of those teams where we see highlights and then all of a sudden they fall back down to earth. What about this week, Tennessee and Jacksonville?
Well, yeah, we thought a couple of weeks ago Jaguars were going to make a move, but again, this is a division game. The Jaguars is always a team that can give you trouble. I will be for the Jaguars in this one, so I don't know. But again, you've got a quarterback injury. We're not sure who's going to play there. So with Jacksonville, so we'll see.
Buffalo, 9.5-point favorites at home against the Jets. Buffalo's the better team. The Great White Hope continues to give the Jets something to cheer for. I'm going to go Buffalo. I just don't think that you can go against them. And I think the Jets are going to start to go the wrong direction here to close out the season. I still think there's hope for them in the years to come, but I'm not sure that this is the time for them. So I'll go Buffalo, even though it's 9.5 points. That's a lot of points.
I think the Jets will cover the spread. I don't know that they'll beat Buffalo, but I think they can keep it closer than that because they have played well. And, of course, they played well against them already. So we'll see.
We both stayed away from Brock Purdy and Tom Brady battle that everybody's excited about. San Francisco and Tampa, again, the defense. San Francisco's favorite 3.5. I almost went Tampa with this in our pick 6. I'm probably still going to pick Tampa, just not in our pick 6s, but it's a weird game, right? We don't know what Brock Purdy is. We don't know what Tampa's going to do to him, all those kinds of things. How do you view this game?
Yeah, like you said, it's hard to know what's going to happen. Tampa had a big comeback this week, but only scored 17 points, and San Francisco's got a good defense. So I don't know for sure that Tampa will win this or not. And if Tampa doesn't keep winning here, we're going to be a real quagmire in their division.
Yeah, it's crazy. The NFL season has been one of the wildest that we've seen in a while, with just a lot of unknowns going into this year. 2 teams eliminated from the playoffs, Houston and Chicago, the only 2 teams that have been eliminated so far. Neither one of those make us sad. So that's the way that it goes. Fantasy football is coming up to the playoffs. This is a bad week to be a Packer fan and a fantasy football player, as the Packers are on bye this week. I've got to survive. Really, the league that I need to win the most in is the league I have the most buys this week. So I got to survive this week for sure. But an interesting NFL season continues here this week for sure. Let's see here. Any other NFL news that we need to cover?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, a lot of movement still, and the season's going to be up in the air. I think probably all the way to the last week at this stage, but definitely for the next couple of weeks. And of course, a lot of teams on bye this week, so that'll affect the schedule a little bit too. And like I said, fantasy football, it's exciting because we'll be heading into the playoffs here in another week, and the NFL is going to be an interesting end of the season.
Yes, it will. Let's move on to college football. We haven't had a show since they announced the playoffs. So let's talk about the top 4. To me, it was the easiest decision that they ever needed to make. These were the 4 teams that needed to be in the playoffs. I disagree with the seedings. I think Michigan and Ohio State should be playing, and Georgia taking on TCU, but it'll be Georgia and Ohio State, Michigan and TCU. You should not agree with me on this because I'm right on this, but these 4 teams were the 4 teams that were needed to be in the playoffs, right?
Yes. Yeah, it came down there. I wasn't sure early on if TCU lost, if they'd stay in, but being, it was an overtime game. And again, it was a much cleaner decision with them having won us than to get into having to decide about the 2 lost teams. So I think these 4 they were the right ones to be in the playoffs. Are they the 4 best teams right now? There's always a discussion about that, but that's not the issue. The issue is, they finished the season, they accomplished certain things, and I think these are the ones I think they're the right 4 to be in.
Yeah, and that's my argument. They're the 4 most deserving. It shouldn't be the 4 best teams. It should be the 4 most deserving teams. You have to be rewarded for what you do. TCU beat a lot of good teams. I think they played 4 ranked opponents that they beat. They lost in their championship game in overtime. And Alabama, their resume wasn't any better than TCU's. And so they shouldn't have made it in over TCU. USC, once they had the 2 losses, obviously were out. Had USC won, I think that they should have been in over Ohio State, and I think they would have been based on how this rankings played out and everything like that as well. Out of those 4 teams, who is it? Who makes it to the championship game? Georgia, Ohio State play, and Michigan and TCU play.
I think it'll be, Georgia and Michigan. Ohio State's good, and but I don't think Georgia will overlook them, and that'll be an interesting game. I think Michigan should beat TCU because they seem to have stayed focused. Especially, even in the Big Ten championship. I've been waiting for them to overlook somebody, but they did have a couple close games during the year. But so I would think Michigan, number 1 against number 2 is what you would look at. If Ohio State plays a good game, that'd be very interesting. But Georgia's just been very solid all year long.
And not just this year, right? They've carried that over. I think Ohio State can beat Georgia. I'll pick Georgia to win. But Ohio State can win that game. Michigan should beat TCU, but TCU's got a really good quarterback, and they could come out and put up some points and surprise Michigan as well. So this might be the most open playoffs we've had in a while. And by setting it up with Georgia versus Ohio State, I think you open the door for that a little bit more. Had you had Georgia versus TCU, and maybe you wouldn't think of it the same way, because I would assume most people, not TCU fans, would pick Georgia easily to win over TCU. And I think most people will still pick Georgia to beat Ohio State, but it's going to make some people think as well. But what has been thought about the most this week in college football has been Deion Sanders. Coach Prime announces the new head football coach of the Colorado Buffaloes. Goes in and has one of the most unique speeches to his new, I guess we can say new team, although the way he talked, most of those players won't be there when Coach Prime shows up to coach his first game in Colorado. I put out a poll on Twitter, and I want to ask you this, Dad, because I don't think I've asked you this or not. Did you ever get a chance to go back and listen to the speech? I should ask you that first.
I'm to listen to Deion's speech.
Yeah.
Yes, I heard it reviewed. I didn't hear the whole thing where I understood all of it, but yes, I did hear it.
All right, so I asked on Twitter, Coach Prime's talk to the current Colorado players was awesome or off-putting. Which way did you view that? Did you view his whole, hey, pack your bags, I'm bringing my own luggage in, you guys aren't very good, speech as an awesome speech, like, hey, smart job by Prime, or did you view it as an off-putting speech from Coach Prime?
What was the second one?
Off-putting. Basically, you didn't like it.
I'd say, I wouldn't say it was awesome. I think, it's good that he's honest with everybody. There's no doubt about that. I think it was a little strange, but on other words, Colorado has not been good. So there's going to have to be changes from there. So I think it was, it would be good from a standpoint of he was being honest with the kids there. From there, I was surprised. I don't think anybody thought about a speech like that. But probably rather than him giving a rah-rah rah, rah, here we go, where we're going to turn things around. And then after it's over, him go in the office and tell his assistants, yeah, but none of these guys are going to be here. It's probably better to be upfront about it.
That's a good take on it. 65% of our pollsters thought it was awesome. 35% said it was off-putting. I see both sides of it. Here's what I did not like about it. He came in and said, some of these positions are already taken care of because I'm bringing in my own luggage. So basically, he just told the team, it's not open competition. I've got guys that I'm already slotted in, his son included at quarterback. I've got guys that I've already promised a spot to. They're going to start. They're going to play. So if you're a quarterback at Colorado right now, you're gone. There's no reason for you to stay because you do not have a fair opportunity to win a job. His son will start at quarterback, no questions asked, and that's the end of the story. Now, should he? Probably, compared to what they have in the room right now. But what coach comes in and says, no competition, I already know who's going to play, and that's the way it goes. To me, that's bad. You should never come in as a coach and say, you should not do this, where you say no competition whatsoever. Because I'm guessing Dion has not watched a whole lot of Colorado football. I'm guessing he's not seen a whole lot of games from those guys at Colorado just yet, would be my guess. Just the personality that Dion is. And so that's what I didn't like about it. I did like the idea of saying, hey, things are going to be different. I think that's great. I think that's a needed message at Colorado, that we are going to change things. This program hasn't been relevant for 20 years. We're going to change that. I think that's good. I just did not like the idea of saying, well, I already got some positions taken care of. You don't have a shot. Again, maybe he has watched a lot of Colorado film and he knows it for a fact. But how do you go into a room and say, you can't even compete for a job at these positions because I'm bringing in my guys? I mean, what kind of motivation is that for guys to come into camp ready to compete if they're being told, you're second tier, you're no good, I got my own guys, you're not playing? Right? That's everybody should transfer. And he didn't say that. I heard some people say, he said everybody needs to pack their bags. That's not what he said. But he did say, if you're going to transfer, you need to do it now. So I don't know. I saw both sides of it, right? I think there's good and there's bad with it.
Well, I think people would have a chance to compete if they stayed. And maybe that was part of the deal. Maybe that's how he would handle it in the spring. Hey, you guys have won the battle on this. And from there, I think him taking that approach probably not, would help his recruiting, because guys know that, hey, if he says, he's bringing us into play, then, we're coming into play. We're not going to, have to compete. It's a new system. Everything's new. If I fit, Coach Prime's system, then, hey, I've got an excellent chance to be able to come right in and play now. So I'm sure that played into it too, that it'll help, his recruiting and help him bring people in.
Yeah, and that's a great point. It will help his recruiting, and he doesn't need a ton of help, right? I mean, we're going to see Colorado probably have, I would guess, a top 10 class this next season between transfer portal, mainly in the transfer portal, probably. But where do you think Colorado will rank in the recruiting class when it's all said and done?
I think it could be in the top 10 because, again, even in Jackson State, a 5-star guy. So I don't know. I haven't kept up, with recruiting that much. Of course, the Southeastern Conference schools are always very strong in recruiting there. I don't know that he'll be in the top 10, but definitely I think he'll, it'd be higher ranked, obviously, than Colorado has been before. And it'd be interesting to see, does he try to get people a lot from all over? What about the West Coast? A lot of players out there, obviously in California and that, and just, where he can probably draw from all over.
I would say probably so. Um, Needless to say, lots of coaching things going on. Liberty hires their new coach. Cincinnati goes out and gets Satterfield from Louisville, an interesting hire. A lot has come out from Satterfield's former players that have not been positive since he got the job at Cincinnati. So I'll be interested to see how that one shakes out as well. We'll continue to watch the coaching changes. Jim Leonard at Wisconsin, Dad, said after the bowl game he's leaving Wisconsin. As Packer fans, we want him as defensive coordinator. Do you think Jim Leonard stays in college, or do you think he makes the move to the NFL?
I don't know. Like I said, I agree. I think we could use him in Green Bay. Looking at some of the coaching changes today with Brom leaving Purdue, I wondered if Purdue is a good spot for Leonard. In the Big Ten, and he'd be in the same areas recruiting where he has been. I think he will probably get offers to be a head coach, I would think. But I don't know where he'll end up. It may end up in the NFL, but I think he may have a shot at a good job in college.
Yeah, I think he'll get interviews. And if he interviews, then maybe he gets an offer too. You're right. Purdue makes a lot of sense. And I forgot about that. Brom is going back to his alma mater in Louisville, the coach there. And that's been rumored for a decade, it seems like now. But he'll go to Louisville, which leaves Purdue open. And you're right, a good fit for Jim Leonard, probably there at Purdue as well. So there's going to be opportunity for him. We'll see where that all shakes out as well. All right, Dad, anything else you need to add before we close?
Nope. I think that's it. I'm sure we'll have a lot more exciting news next week. So
I'm sure we will, between coaching things and Major League Baseball free agency and everything else going on. We'll have plenty to talk about. Today's episode, again, is presented by True Classic. If you need a shirt that fits you perfectly, you go to trueclassic.com at checkout. Use the code BELLYUPFANTASY. You're going to get 25% off your purchase at trueclassic.com. Follow us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Sports Stove. If you missed any portion of today's episode, if you're watching us live on Belly Up TV or YouTube or Facebook, go to anywhere you get your podcasts and you can catch the entire episode right there. Thank you for tuning in to today's Sports Stove podcast. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.